AITAH for canceling the wedding after my fiancé's prank? I need to know, because 10 days before the ceremony, my life shattered, and it all centered on my dog. My tiny, perfect golden retriever, Baxter. He was gone. Disappeared. I raced around the house that morning, the terrible silence of a missing collar and an empty dog bed screaming at me. My heart was pounding, a desperate drumbeat against my ribs as I checked the backyard, the front porch, the street corner, and then came back inside to find my fiancé, Alex. He just stood there, smiling with that cold, unsettling smirk when I panicked. He thought it was hilarious. He took Baxter and left him at an unknown, remote kennel 3 states away as a test of my commitment to him, not the dog. My world stopped spinning. Comment what you would do right now. Is this even legal? What's your take? I was hysterical, calling the police, ready to declare him a missing person, when Alex finally, casually, admitted the truth. He said it was just a prank, a way to see who I cared about more, my silly dog or our future. It wasn't funny. It was calculated cruelty. The panic, the sheer terror I felt for those 6 hours, was a red flag the size of a billboard. It wasn't just the dog. It was the pattern. The lies, the controlled distress. I saw his face, the smugness, and realized I was looking at a complete stranger, someone who enjoyed my suffering. I didn't scream. I just went silent, a terrifying kind of calm washing over me. I took the platinum engagement ring off and placed it on the kitchen counter next to the emergency boarding documents he'd foolishly left out. I called my parents first. They were already packing their bags for the rehearsal dinner. I told them to turn around. The wedding was off. Cancelled. Done. Alex's reaction was immediate rage. He went from smug jokester to a screaming maniac, accusing me of being unhinged, too sensitive, and ruining his life over a silly dog. He didn't apologize for Baxter, only misjudging my sense of humor. That's when the second revelation hit me, harder than the first. He wasn't just cruel, he was entitled to my forgiveness. He demanded I call the vendors back, that I fix this because he didn't do anything wrong. I changed the locks that afternoon while he was desperately trying to retrieve Baxter, which by the way, cost me $500 in emergency transport fees and 2 days of therapy for the poor dog. Baxter was shaken, but safe, thank goodness. But the fear hasn't stopped. It's escalating. I keep thinking, if he could do this over a dog, what would he do over money, a career decision, or, heaven forbid, a disagreement about children? What other dark secrets was he keeping, hidden behind his charming facade? I was shaking as I grabbed the ring and the envelope it was sitting on, ready to toss them both out of the window. That was my mistake. I should have just thrown the whole mess away, but I paused. When I grabbed the engagement ring, my fingers brushed against the thick, linen envelope underneath, the one Alex had left with the kennel papers, the one he clearly hadn't intended for me to see. It was slightly heavier than just a standard letter. My hands were still trembling from the confrontation with Alex, but curiosity, that dangerous, awful curiosity, took over. I pulled the document out. It was a formal bank loan agreement, but the sight of the numbers made my stomach drop into my shoes. It wasn't a small amount, it was a massive personal loan for $50,000. And worse, there was my signature. The loan date was stamped almost exactly a year ago, right when Alex started pressuring me to consolidate some of my credit card debt, saying he'd help me clean up my finances before the marriage. I trusted him completely, giving him access to everything. Now I realized he didn't just clean up my finances, he used them as collateral for his own secret debt. My signature was an obvious forgery, poorly done, but effective enough on official-looking documents. I was staring at a legal paper confirming that my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in 10 days, hadn't just emotionally abused me, he had committed fraud against me. This wasn't a prank. This was a financial crime. I sat down hard on the cold kitchen tiles, the initial terror replaced by a bone-chilling clarity. The cruelty to Baxter wasn't a random test, it was a distraction, a power move to keep me off balance while he handled his own issues. He had taken this loan and was banking on the wedding happening so that my assets would soon become partially his, making the debt my problem too. Everything he did, every sweet gesture, every charming smile, suddenly felt like a transaction, a calculated step towards stealing my financial independence. I had to know the extent of the damage. I knew Alex's laptop was in the home office, unsecured, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely type the login. I told myself I was gathering evidence for the police, but the truth was I was desperate, driven by a horrifying need to know who this monster was. I found the financial folder, and the loan was there, but it wasn't the only thing. The financial drain on his own accounts was shocking, not just the one loan, but evidence of massive gambling losses. That's why he needed the money. That's why he used my name. I felt like I was going to throw up, but then I saw the browser history. I took a deep, shuddering breath and clicked on the browser history, bracing myself for more gambling sites or maybe even correspondence with the bank, but what I found was entirely different, and frankly, completely unhinged. There were repeated, recent searches, dating back just to the past week, about a very specific, and completely foreign, European country. The search terms were not about tourism. They were about escape. The search history showed queries like, legal steps to acquire citizenship fast, can you revoke citizenship immediately after taking the oath, and easiest country to transfer large funds without international tax. He wasn't just planning to defraud me, he was planning to disappear. He had been setting up a bolt hole, an escape route, and he had been doing it while planning our wedding, while pretending to love me. The prank with Baxter suddenly made terrifying sense. He didn't care about my commitment to him. He was performing a power play before a swift exit. He wanted to see how much emotional control he had, how long it would take me to forgive him, and if he could still manipulate me into staying long enough for the final paperwork to be signed. He was testing the limits of my stability before he ran. The man I was supposed to marry was a criminal, a gambling addict, and a fugitive in training. I spent the next 20 minutes frantically scrolling through his emails, matching up the loan documents to encrypted messages he was sending to an unknown legal contact. The contact detailed a complex legal maneuver where he would acquire citizenship, quickly transfer his liquidated assets, and then, immediately revoke the acquired citizenship to make his financial trail harder to track. He was planning to be financially untraceable and beyond extradition. I sat back, the reality crashing down on me. I was 10 days away from marrying a man who was actively setting up his escape from the country, and he was planning to leave me buried under $50,000 of his debt. This wasn't a heartbreak, this was a hostage situation. I immediately called my lawyer, not the wedding planner. I sent them the photos of the loan document and the screenshots of the browser history, and I didn't mince words. I told him my ex-fiancé, Alex, was a fugitive in waiting and a fraudster. The lawyer was shocked, but his response was immediate: "You are in danger. He needs to be removed from the property right now, legally." My next call was to my father, not to cry, but to ask him to drive straight over. I told him I needed muscle and a witness to legally remove this stranger from my house. The wedding was off, but the real fight, the fight for my freedom, was just beginning. My father arrived within the hour, a quiet, powerful presence that immediately made me feel safer. When Alex returned, dragging his feet after the humiliating, expensive trek to retrieve Baxter, he found my father standing guard by the front door, the locks already changed. Alex went predictably ballistic. He screamed about his rights, about how I was destroying his life, and how he would sue me for every penny of the cancelled wedding. My father, bless him, just held up a hand. He didn't raise his voice, he just calmly stated that the police had been informed about the theft, the fraud, and the documented plans to leave the country. That word, police, shut Alex down faster than anything else. His face, which had been contorted in rage, went white. The swagger was gone, replaced by pure, undeniable fear. The financial predator, the charming abuser, instantly transformed into a cornered, terrified child. He started pleading, trying to negotiate, claiming it was all a big misunderstanding and that he just needed help paying off a few debts. He completely ignored the citizenship plan, which was its own chilling admission of guilt. He tried to physically push past my father to get to me, to try and manipulate me one last time, but my father held the line. We gave him 1 hour to pack a single bag of essentials, under my father's supervision, and then he was gone. He didn't even look back at Baxter. It's been a chaotic 2 weeks since then. I filed a police report for the forged loan and I'm working with my lawyer to legally separate my finances and prosecute the fraud. The police are now involved, investigating the extent of his financial crimes, which, based on his recent behavior, I suspect are far greater than just the one loan. Baxter is recovering, attached to my hip, and giving me a reason to smile again. The pain of the cancelled wedding is still there, a dull ache, but it's nothing compared to the relief. The fear hasn't stopped completely, but it has changed. It's no longer the hysterical panic for my dog, it's the cold, hard fear of what could have been. If I hadn't seen that smug look on his face, if I hadn't found that envelope, I would be married to a criminal, bound to his debt, and facing an impossible future. My initial question was, AITAH for cancelling the wedding after my fiancé's prank? But the real crisis was what happens now. I know the answer. I am absolutely not the jerk. I saved my life, my dog, and my future. I dodged a bullet that was not just a heartbreak, but financial ruin and potential danger. I am grateful for that 6 hours of terror because it stripped away the illusion and showed me the monster. I should have trusted my gut much sooner, but the lesson has been learned, brutally and completely. I have a long legal fight ahead of me, but I am safe, I am free, and I am putting my life back together, one brave step at a time.